Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I could probably have enough questions to go 5 minutes on just one of our secretaries, let alone two. And I don't know whether they're going to get to a second round given today's scheduling of events. So I want to say a couple things. First of all, thank you for what I call digital weather efforts by the agency. I think this is critically important, critically important. We shouldn't depend on the Europeans for the best data about what the effects of a storm are. And if we need supercomputing time and more digital analysis, let's get that. To me, this is critically important. Thank you both for your focus on freight and the movement of freight, the $18 billion over the next 6 years to implement what I think is a new freight strategy for our country so we can be more competitive at our ports is critically important given the amount of consumer growth around the world, and being able to move our products effectively is going to be very important. And Secretary Pritzker would love to talk to you about the cuts in the Salmon Recovery Fund, because I'm very anxious about what that is going to do to, treaty rights at risk and our salmon recovery efforts. I want to ask you a question about recapitalization of, the rest of NOAA's fleet. There's some money in here, but we obviously want NOAA to recapitalize. So I may not get to a response to you on that. So I will submit those for the record, and hopefully, and on spectrum allocation. Now that we've gotten that done, what do we need to do to clear the clearing part so that we can actually get the allocations done? These are very important economic issues to the Pacific Northwest. Secretary Foxx, I need to focus on something that's of utmost importance to the people of the Northwest, and that is the issue of our enormous increase in volume of oil trains and what we are doing on safety. This boils down for me to two issues: the thickness of the hulls and when we are going to phase out the less secure cars. Now, I think that you are moving through a rule process, if I am correct, but that rule process to date leaves many options on the table, including a thickness that is not as good, not as durable. I know my colleague from West Virginia will probably have some interest in this, given what just happened in West Virginia. But what are we expected to see a final rule in May of this year? And what will be the phase-out time for these rail cars to be moved over to the new standard? And will there be a definite commitment to the thickness that we need, at least this 9/16 with a thermal jacket?
First of all, Senator, I want to thank you for your leadership and focus on this effort. There have been a number of members of Congress who have expressed concern, as well as governors and local officials in parts of the country on this issue. It is an issue that we take very seriously at the Department of Transportation, and that is why we think that a comprehensive approach is important, an approach that takes into account prevention, mitigation, as well as emergency response, and that was reflected in the notice of proposed rulemaking that was issued last year. We are in the process of working with the OMB and the administration on moving that rule into a final rule. I would be getting ahead of myself and probably OMB by putting a tight deadline on it, but I can tell you that there is a high level of urgency on it. And the issues of tank cars and standards and things like that are being worked through. And I would also add that we are working with our Canadian counterparts to ensure that there is a good level of harmony between the two rules.
Well, I explained to my staff that I thought you would be a talented public servant and be able to get around this particular question. So I just want to be clear on the record. I will be introducing legislation to support a thicker haul and a quicker phase out than what is currently proposed in this rule. We're not moving fast enough, and I think the uncertainty in the marketplace over the last decade has not kept pace with the volume of traffic that we are seeing now. So I look forward to seeing your rule, but we are going to come out as for tougher standards that are than are currently. I see loopholes in this current policy If one of the three options is adopted, basically, we're going to have the same, cars that are relevant to what we have on the tracks today, and that's unacceptable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.